When I was using this door earlier, I noticed how stiff the hinges were and they've rusted up. So I'm going to use a bit of this WD-40 to stop it sticking. It pays when you're doing this just to give it a moment to soak in and then work it to and fro. Started to free up slowly. Not too bad. Certainly a lot freer than it was. There we go. Right. One of the things I've been looking at over the last couple of weeks is how best to lay out my beds in the no-dig garden. Now, no-dig gardens are very liberating in that you don't really have to worry about putting the same crop in the same place, although I do try and alternate them. I make up these little plans. They're just a blank which I print out each year, and I just jot in the things that I think will go in specific places. And you can see these keys that I've used. Orange is white rot, and that's where I've had white rot in the past, and I need to be careful I don't put another allium crop in those beds. And the green is the dreaded clubroot, and again, you can't really get rid of this in the soil, so you need to avoid planting into those beds in the future. So that's the way I mark this up. Everything else is reasonably changeable. The only thing I do have to consider, well, I'll show you outside. So the other considerations that I try and make: volume of the crop I want to grow. Obviously these beds lend themselves to a greater volume, so I tend to put leeks and parsnips in here. And of course, when it comes to runner beans, I need the extra height, so I usually put it into one of these beds. And then over on the raised beds, I've got the two different varieties of hoop, the taller hoop and the lower hoops. So these lend themselves better to swedes and beetroots and those lower crops. And the taller crops, some cabbages and kale, and probably onions as well, tend to lend themselves to these higher ones. These beds on the side are also that much higher, and therefore if there's anything really tall, I can put them in here. These beds tend not to be as successful as those. I'm not quite sure why, but I tend to be a bit cautious what I'm going to put in here. So they are the only other considerations, and no dig approach to gardening is very liberating because of that lack of worry about planting the same thing twice. I think I will successfully plant up my plot this year without putting something in the same place that it was last year, but if it did happen, no drama. So I've got these rather splendid seed and plant tags. They're made of bamboo, and I think they're laser cut. So this one, for example, says celeriac. So I'm just going to use them to pop into the various locations from my plan. See how I get on. So I know that I'm going to put leeks in this bed, and I'm going to have some onion sets in this bed. What else? Parsnips. Now this year the parsnips are going down in this lower bed, so I'm going to stick that in there. Right, onward. Well, I want to be as ready as I can, so when it gets really frantic and I'm trying to sow a few more seeds and plant some small plants out in the beds, I don't want to be worrying about getting all the nets organised, so I'm going to put nets up very soon. Let me show you why I use nets. So this definitely isn't a mole. This is definitely a cat. Well, it's not a cat now, it's what a cat left. And if I bring you up here, unfortunately, more examples of why I need to put nets onto the crops. It wouldn't be the end of the world. It's not very hygienic and can be a little bit dangerous, but the main reason is you put young seedlings in and they just get dug up. So nets it is on pretty much all the beds, and the only ones that I don't net tend to be the runner beans, because obviously I use poles. So it's a long, slow process, but I'll speed it up for you. So before I put those nets on the long beds, I'm going to plant my broad beans, and I'm going to put out the onion sets, which have come on very nicely. Let me show you. So they've been in there, I don't know, a week or two, and they've just started to sprout nicely. I think I've got one dud there, but everything else has come well. So they're going to go in to this end of this bed, and the spacing for these I've put at about 6 to 8 inches, and just 3 rows, because the onions will grow to the point where I need to remove the net, and if I keep it in the middle, that just gives it longevity. And I've got 45, and I think there's 43 will go in there, so that's fine. And then the other thing that I'm going to sow today is broad bean masterpiece green, and the broad beans I've marked out, and they're 10 to 12 inches apart, and I've done 3 rows of those. And again, they'll get to a height where I can no longer keep the net on, but that's fine. That's about keeping the cats off until the plants are established. So I've been using this rather long handled dibber, and that's because my hip's feeling pretty painful at the moment, and if I can dib from up high, then that really helps. So I'm going to get these in, and we'll get the net on top as soon as we got those in. The broad beans are going down about 2 inches, and the onion sets will just have the green shoots coming out of the soil. And of course I suffer quite a lot from crows or jackdaws pulling them out, but not with the nets on, which is fantastic. I often think we're getting a bit of a rush to put our seeds and our plants into the ground, when actually in the whole scheme of having a vegetable garden, it's one of the most enjoyable elements, planting the plants that you've grown from seed and putting in new seed. So my philosophy is take your time, enjoy it, because you only get a short spell of planting, and then you're on to weeding and harvesting, and then of course we go full cycle. So enjoy it where you can. So I have to spread these hoops out and get good use of them across the plot. So I think in this occasion I've got one too many, because I've put these new ones in. So I'm going to take some out and spread them around, and that way they cover the whole plot. Well, I've got my snips ready because I'm getting a bit of a problem with dock leaves. I'll show you. So the bank that I constructed seems to have had a flurry of these dock leaves. And what I'm going to do is just snip them. I'm working on the basis, a bit like no dig, if you weaken the weed sufficiently, it'll eventually give up. I can't dig these out because if I do, the bed will just collapse. So hopefully this method will get rid of them. But there's a lot to do. Not only are they along this bed, they're also up here, and I'm going to try and snip those as well. If I can keep on top of this, at least keep the weeds down, it'll make an easier job when I eventually get to tackle that. I don't think it's going to be for a while. I think my groundworks for this year are finished and we're on to growing. This is a little job that I've been meaning to do. I put this bit of wire over the top of these sinks to stop the cats from using it as a litter tray, but I need to tidy it up and make it a bit more secure. So I'm just going to cut, it's roughly the same shape as the top of the sink, maybe with a bit of overlap just to tuck it into the soil, and then hopefully I can cover these two areas up and keep them safe from cat infestation. See how I get on. It's a lovely afternoon. It's beginning of April and it's cold outside, but in the polytunnel it's beautiful. So I'm going to plant just a few flowers, and I've been watching the UK gardening program called Gardener's World, and on there is one of my heroes, Monty Don. He's the presenter and gardener, and what that man doesn't know about gardening, fantastic. So I noticed this week he was sowing his dahlia seed, and he was encouraging people to sow along with him. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'd already bought some dahlia seeds, so I thought, well, it must be the right time. I think he even has the same dahlia seed that I have, which is Figaro Mix and Dwarf Dandy. At least he's got one of them, I think. So I'm going to pop those into trays, because that's what he's doing. I'm just going to see how I get along compared to Monty. I'm sure he'll do a lot better. I'm also going to sow my Cosmos, which is saved seed from last year, and that's Dwarf Cosmos and Cosmos. And I'm going to sow a little batch of Celeriac, and I'm going to sow these into this very small tray and take it indoors for germination, and then bring it back out here as soon as I see them germinated. So a few flower seeds, one vegetable, beautiful day, got to be done. So that's my dahlias in. Come on, Monty, we can get there. That's the Dwarf and the Figaro Mix. And I'm going to keep these in my polytunnel rather than germinate them indoors. See how I get on. Cosmos and Cosmos Dwarf. So we'll put a propagator lid over the top of those and we're good to go. Good times. One of the benefits I had from putting in this barrier for the chickens, keeping them under the bushes, is that I recovered of the ground. And the reason I'm going to use that is for extending the flat area that I use for putting the potato pots on. So I've got quite a lot of soil to move here, and it's going down and continuing the flattening and levelling of the lower end of the pot. So it's going to be a slow and leisurely, well, hoe. And I'm going to be using my Chillington hoe, which is just a fantastic tool. Here goes. I'm done for now. that's got the bulk of that out. I just need to tidy up the edges, get a little bit level in places. But it's amazing how much space that's made. I've got a bit of an ulterior motive. I was thinking, if I ever had a greenhouse or another polytunnel, that would be a good space. It never used to feel like there was enough space here, but as I've cleared up, so it's become quite a good space to work with. And the levelling carries on, and this used to be a real valley in here, and we're getting close to flat down here now, which is really nice. Makes everything that much easier to work with. So, good afternoon's work. I do hope you enjoyed the video today. If you did, click the subscribe button, click the like button, and if you want updates from me each time I upload a video, click the bell and select all. I do hope you have a great day. Diolch yn fawr.